But you can see our players here. On the left-hand side, you have got Markus. On the right-hand side, Javier. Now, these are, again, two veterans of VGC action. They have got loads of accolades under their belt, lots of top finishes at regionals, nationals, internationals, and world championships too.
Yes, we do, and I'm generally just very impressed to see them every time they come. And they look pretty chill here. They look like they've kind of slept well, going right. Just another day in the life, day 2, Bochum regionals. Yeah, so congrats to these players. So looking at Javier's team a little bit here, it'll be up on your screen shortly. We've got Roaring Moon, Iron Bundle, Golden Go, Fluttermane, Iron Hands, and Amoonguss. So very much kind of the standard 6 for this weekend that we've been seeing a lot of recently, with the Roaring Moon having that acrobatic set, with the kind of the Flying Terror, etc. But yeah, here's those accolades that we've been mentioning as well. Look at those. I'm sure there's more to go as well. Javier EUIC top 16, Malmo Regionals top 4, 2017 LAIC runner-up, 2016 Italy national champion. Well, again, national champions apiece. You've got Markus there winning the German nationals in 2014, the UK nationals in 2015, in top 4 at 2016 Worlds. I remember watching that as well. It was a fantastic event. And then in 2017, the Leipzig regional champion. Again, Javier, like you've mentioned, Italy national champion. And then again, some great finishes here. 2017 was actually the runner-up at the Latin America International Championships. So in order to get these top places, you have to be a veteran of the competition. You need to be able to have that experience, that wisdom, in order to be that consistent. Yeah, and these players have probably done a lot of practice versus some of the teams that they've probably been going up against. But I wonder how much Javier has been prepared for this Iron Juggler, which you can see here now on your screens. So it's running the booster energy with a Snarl, Tailwind, Air Slash, and Protect. So you can argue it's probably doing a very similar role to what Roaring Moon often does, with flying offense, Tailwind we've seen often on it, and some kind of dark kind of coverage. Now, obviously, it already starts off as a flying type with that dark type offense as well, so it's fairly decent into, say, in DDR Rouge, where you can just kind of lead it, snarl down things, and in DDR Rouge, you really don't like to kind of face down that. I love the speed control as well on Tailwind. I think a lot of players have kind of been forgoing that recently, so I think that's a nice option. And the Air Slash obviously has that nasty 30% flinch chance. Yes, really nice to see that in the fray. And you said it's very similar to Roaring Moon, and guess what? On the opposing side, there is a Roaring Moon to contend with, running that Tailwind as well in order to give Javier the kind of speed control option on his side of the field, as well as that acrobatics to deal some good damage with booster energy, because that gets activated when you're on the field. That then means your item is gone, acrobatics is going to be able to deal even more damage. Some key Pokemon also to talk about is the Golden Go. This has been a Pokemon that's, I think, really made a strong appearance in Series 2. It kind of got lost along the way, but is definitely back with a vengeance. And I think it's this set that's really kind of made it carve out its mark. Running Nasty Plot on it, running a Golden Go that's a little bit bulkier, so it's going to be able to take a couple of hits, allow you to be able to set that Nasty Plot up, means you're going to be able to deal a huge chunk of damage, particularly as Make It Rain is being A, its signature move, B, a spread move, and C, dealing a lot of damage. But the drawback it has is it will drop your special attack. So having the Nasty Plot in order to compensate for that, so you can maybe have 2 powerful Make It Rains, I think is a really nice tech on this team. Just noticed the Fluttermane is kind of running Perish Song here, which is really cool. There's no kind of Gothitelle to kind of help trap things in here, but you can kind of see from the offensive power of Javier's team here, that Golden Go, the Iron Hands, the Roaring with the Iron Bundle, everything's so powerful. You may be trying to have a way to kind of just get 2 knockouts really quickly, get it down to the last 2 Pokemon of your opponent, and then just Perish Song away. And also was generally a nice way to kind of deal with Dondozo with that Focus Sash. Yeah, interestingly enough, there's actually a Gothitelle on Marcus's side, but not paired up, obviously, on Javier's side with that Perish Song. And I think there's an interesting tech to have on your team, because you never know, it might be a win condition. But I'd love to see this Iron Juggler out in front from Markus, paired up with the Golden Go. And on the opposing side, it's that Roaring Moon and the Amoonguss. Yeah, attack is the boost on this Roaring Moon this time. And let's see the boost on this Giant Juggler, which is the speed. Okay, so yeah, very much being that more supportive variant with the speed on Iron Juggler. So it's now going to be outspeeding this Roaring Moon. So it's going to be able to get a Tailwind up, and that allows the Golden Go to outspeed the Roaring Moon here. But Snarl is looking okay as well to kind of dish a little bit of damage out, but not too much effectiveness into the physical type of the Roaring Moon's attacks. However, Golden Go here is looking very interesting in its set, which we haven't even talked about either yet. It's the choice specs, so very different to what a lot of people are running. With the Trick as well, that's something that Javier's going to have to be very wary of, especially to say something like the Amoonguss, which really doesn't want that at all.
Yeah, and Amoonguss getting out of there doesn't want to have some choice specs tricked onto it. It does, of course, leave the Golden Go free to go for a powerful Make It Rain at this point in time. Iron Hands jumping into the fray for Javier here would be able to apply some fake-up pressure into the Iron Jugless going into this next turn. We are going to see straight out of the blocks here in day 2 a terrestrialization. It is going to be that Golden Go on Markus' side of the field, and it's that Terra Steel, so Make It Rain, which I believe is the move that Markus actually has locked into, is going to deal an extra 50% damage thanks to that Terra type.
Yep, makes a lot of sense to be the Terra Steel when you just want to maximize the damage output that you possibly can. So I'm really keen to see actually how much damage this is going to do. Ooh, well, there is the Protect on Javier's Roaring Moon, so we're not going to see a huge ton of damage, especially into this resisted hit from the Iron Hands and it being Assault Vest too.
Yeah, this is definitely a lovely switch by Javier, you know, making sure Amoonguss gets out of there, brings in the Iron Hands, that's going to be able to take that like a champ. I mean, you can see exactly what Markus was trying to do there, just go for big, big damage out of the blocks, and it did force Javier to play defensively there and go for the Protect.
Makes a lot of sense, but the Iron Jugless is still in a really nice position here. It can get up that Tailwind a little bit later as well, so to really still make the most of it. And now Golden goes the Steel type, it's not going to take super effective damage from any sort of Dark type moves coming out from the Roaring Moon, like that Throat Chop as well. So it's kind of looking alright. However, with the Iron Hand switch in here, it's now able to fake out the Golden Go, which is something that it hasn't, not usually a factor here. And Markus has also revealed the Terrestrialization kind of first as well, which allows Javier to respond with his own.
I think that's a great catch, actually. Losing that Ghost typing does make you vulnerable to the fake out, and particularly as we know that the Golden Go is choice specs. We know it can't protect. The Terra is going to be obviously the flying type onto that opposing Roaring Moon. We've seen this a lot. Iron Jugless going first though with the Air Slash does a little bit of damage to the opposing Roaring Moon, which is going to be able to retaliate with this Acrobatics. Remember, its boosted energy has gone. This is going to deal even more damage. Huge, huge damage onto Iron Jugless, but not enough to get the KO. Golden Go is going to be able to go for the Make It Rain for the second time here, and it's not going to be able to get the knockout on Roaring Moon. Those special attack drops really, really kind of giving Golden Go an issue with getting the knockouts. Close combat, however, that can get a knockout. A one-hit KO into Golden Go.
Straight up close combat there. So Javier not going for the fake out that turn, probably realizing that his ones are going to be able to live a few hits first, and probably securing the KO there without giving Markus kind of the chance to kind of switch out the following turn. He just wants to secure that down. So it makes a lot of sense for Javier getting rid of the Golden Go, which is also the Terrestrialized Pokemon. So that is now completely off the field for Markus. However, Iron Jugless has now the ability to kind of KO this Roaring Moon now with the Air Slash. You can kind of chip that off, and the Iron Hand's been very slow. Great Tusk is in a great position to just kind of hit down on this Iron Hand. So it's definitely on Javier's end here to be go more on the defensive play and see if his fourth Pokemon in the back can be the key turning point and be able to turn the tide into his favor.
Yeah, this is definitely more standard Great Tusk in the sense it's running Protect, Headlong Rush, Earthquake, and Close Combat. Not seeing any of those rogue Stone Edges here, which is what Markus, I think, really would need in order to hit the Roaring Moon. Being a flying type, you don't want to hit it with a Close Combat either. It is going to Protect, however, so no damage coming that way in this game. Iron Jugless targeting it down with the Air Slash, so a nice defensive play by Javier here. Of course, now this does leave the Great Tusk free to go for the Headlong Rush into that opposing Iron Hands, get the knockout against it, and now they've kind of evened the score of Pokemon KO'd.
Yeah, something that I like actually about the Iron Jugless is because it is that flying type, obviously. It allows you to position your Great Tusk next to it and just freely kind of go for Earthquakes without feeling like you need to Terrestrialize into the flying type. So there's a little bit of synergy there that kind of Iron Jugless kind of helps out with that Roaring Moon doesn't really do. But it is the Flutter Mane now that Javier is kind of moving into position next to his Roaring Moon, which makes a lot of sense. It's a good Pokemon. But with the booster energy on Iron Jugless, it's probably still faster than the Flutter Mane, which allows it to still kind of get up the Tailwind, which we still haven't seen Markus go for yet. So which will then boost the Great Tusk even further, and an Earthquake, it will be able to dish out a lot of damage to the Flutter Mane. Roaring Moon's going to avoid that, thankfully, for Javier, but so Great Tusk kind of has to pick as to what it's going to be dealing damage to, but with the Focus Sash on this Flutter Mane, it's going to need to get hit at least twice to be able to go down. Yeah,
this is definitely the turn for Tailwind on Markus' side, I think, because that Flutter Mane is just going to target down the Iron Jugless and remove it from the field. Amoonguss is going to jump back into the action, though, as Great Tusk wisely, I think, goes for a Protect here, just wanting to make sure it doesn't have to take any unnecessary damage from something like a Dazzling Gleam. We do see the Tailwind on Markus' side, so the speed is going to be doubled now for the next 3 turns of this match. As Flutter Mane does indeed go for that Dazzling Gleam, this will be able to get the knockout on the Iron Jugless, but that Great Tusk safe and sound behind its Protect.
Yeah, I'd be curious actually to see how much damage it can take. It probably does kind of go down to a Moonblast, but maybe not so much a Dazzling Gleam, but it's still a nice safe protect here. Tailwind has now been set up, and now you're bringing in Iron Bundle, which arguably is going to be doing a lot more offensive damage to both of these Pokemon with its ice coverage. However, with no water moves to kind of speak of, this is a really interesting set, but as you can see, into Javier's team, like, you don't really need that water coverage at all, and especially with all the Torkoals running around, it's just now not a factor. So I quite like what Markus has ended up going for here. As we've already talked about before, how you kind of want Icy Wind, you want Encore, you want Protect, you want the water move, you want the ice move, and Markus this time, uniquely it seems, has kind of dropped the water move this time. So he's going straight for that Icy Wind, but it misses the Amoonguss.
Misses the Amoonguss, but critically does break the Focus Sash on that opposing Flutter Mane, which I think is one of the key things to do. It's not like you need to lower the speed of Amoonguss, it's already super slow. But the Earthquake's going to connect, you're going to hurt your own Iron Bundle, but get the knockout on the Flutter Mane. A sigh of relief for Markus. That powerhouse Pokemon has now gone out. You do have to contend with the Amoonguss that can freely go for a Spore into your Iron Bundle, but the key thing I think is getting rid of that Flutter Mane.
Yeah, that's a really good play from Markus. Just kind of covering from the Rage Powder option that Javier could have gone for there to be able to keep his Flutter Mane safe. And he ends up going for the Earthquake. Obviously, as we saw, Javier didn't end up going for the Rage Powder, so he does be able to get that key Spore off here. But Tailwind is still in play, so Markus has the ability to still really put on the pressure with these the Great Tusk's moves. However, it is the Flying type, so he still can't go for those spread attacks, so Amoonguss can still keep this Great Tusk safe for at least another turn. But the question is, does Roaring Moon kind of target into the Great Tusk here, or does the Great Tusk protect, predicting that? So let's see going into this turn what happens.
I really hope that Icy Wind miss doesn't come back to bite Markus. It looks like with the chip, another Earthquake would have been able to get the KO on the opposing Amoonguss. Iron Bundle, of course, just going to take a turn of sleep here, and Great Tusk is not going to do any damage to it while it's sleeping. It's not going to wake it up anyway. Goes through the Headlong Rush and gets the knockout on this Amoonguss. It does, of course, leave it exposed to something coming out from this opposing Roaring Moon, but of course, if Roaring Moon wants to go down into that Iron Bundle, Great Tusk is then free to close combat it in the next turn. With the low HP that the Roaring Moon still has, that should be able to get the knockout. But Acrobatics removing Iron Bundle from the match.
Yeah, interesting going into the Iron Bundle there, because you are going into a sleeping target, which was, chances are it was going to stay sleeping for a little bit longer as well. But this time you've kind of hit down that slot to make sure you kind of get rid of it, because it is probably the one Pokemon that outside of Tailwind can still outspeed you. So I do like this play from Javier, because he's been able to stall out the Tailwind a little bit better here. And as you can see, the Tailwind is now gone. Roaring Moon is probably faster than this Great Tusk.
Yeah, that was a great play, actually, having that Protect to just stall out Tailwind. Like you said, now Roaring Moon is free to go for that Acrobatics into the Great Tusk, and it will get the knockout, meaning Javier is going to take this game one in a very closely fought match.
Yeah, it really was close, actually. There's kind of like no obvious way for either of these players to like win at any point. It was really much a positioning game at that in this one, because you obviously have the speed control from the Iron Jugglers being able to go for those Tailwinds and get them up in a key amount of turns. But it was the prolonging and saving of that Roaring Moon in the end with that Flying type Terror, which was so key into the Great Tusk, that enabled him to win that in the end, without it even really doing any of his own Tailwind stuff as well.
For me, it was really the Golden Go on Markus's side that I think put him on the back foot. I really like the play going for that Terra Steel, because if it had been able to connect that Make It Rain, it would have got so much damage onto that opposing Roaring Moon that then wouldn't have been available for Javier to have in the endgame. Unfortunately, though, not only did it not be able to deal damage, but because it dropped that Ghost type, it then became susceptible to the close combat from the Iron Hands. Again, not something you see every day when it's a Ghost type Pokemon, but when you lose it, it does leave you vulnerable. Suddenly, this Iron Hands that couldn't hit you before is now going to deal super effective damage, and that unfortunately I think meant that the Golden Go just wasn't utilized strongly for Markus in this game one. I have to credit, though, the way he was then able to pull back into this match and take it down to that very close endgame. So going into game two, I would like to see the Golden Go piloted with a little bit more effect. You know, possibly Javier is very good at kind of observing how Markus is going to play and making those correct reads. So possibly Markus might have to throw a few wild moves in there in order to outplay what Javier is trying to guess.
Yeah, Markus doesn't have a huge amount for like Spores, and Golden Go is one of those things that he does have. With the good as Gold ability, it's not going to be affected by status moves at all. The other one that he does have is the Terra Grass Iron Hands, which he didn't actually bring. So you can see that Golden Go was kind of the only option he had to be able to prevent those Spores. There was really nothing, there's no kind of taunt going around, there's no other Terra Grass that's kind of happening, so I can understand why he kind of led that, so that he offers a bit of freedom to be able to deal with it. But then, as we saw, the Moongus was able to then come in a little bit later, after the Golden Go had kind of been dispatched of pretty much easily, and then the Rage Powers kept going, the Spores kind of been thrown off. It was just allowed to do exactly what Amoonguss wants to do. And I think in this game, where Amoonguss is just so common, you can't let it run away with you like that.
Yeah, the Iron Hands might not be a bad shout with Wild Charge as well, being able to deal with something like the Roaring Moon. The issue is, of course, you've got to take those flying type moves as well. We're not going to see a change up for Markus as the Iron Jugulus with the Golden Go versus the Iron Hands and the Roaring Moon.
Okay, so interestingly, on the Iron Jugulus here, it is just the booster energy. There's no kind of ghost-type terror, so it is very much a fake-out target from the Iron Hands here to prevent any sort of tailwind shenanigans or snarls or the air slash that would hit this Iron Hands fairly well. So Golden Go can obviously still go for the Terastallization here. It'd be a huge call for Javier to go for a fake out into it, predicting that. So you could, it's a fairly safe option to be able to dish out a lot of damage and also then take the throat chop a little bit better. So I like this lead from Markus still, even though it's kind of the same as last time. It offers him a lot of flexibility, at least in that turn 1, until he locks himself into something with that choice specs.
I like the idea of going for that Make It Rain, but not going for the Terror, because then you're not committing to it and losing it on your side of the field. Iron Jugulus is able to go for that Tailwind, boosting up the speed by 2 times on Markus's side. That's going to make this Golden Go even speedier as it does go for that Make It Rain. Of course, it's going into the Protect of the Roaring Moon, and we know it's not going to deal too much damage to that Assault Vest Iron Hands on the opposing side. But the critical thing is Iron Hands can't really touch it as it's got that Ghost typing. Yes, it can go for some Electric type moves, but that close combat cannot affect it at this point in time. The actual target, however, was the Iron Jugulus, just going for that Volt Switch, repositioning a little bit on Javier's side, going to bring something in that might be able to deal a little bit stronger with this Golden Go.
Yeah, and I imagine the it is the Amoonguss coming in here at the moment, which does get threatened obviously by the Air Slash and a lot of damage from the Golden Go still, which has the option of the Terastallization to be able to do even more damage. I think that's probably a calculation Markus knows a little bit better than we do as to whether that is going to KO, but I'd imagine Air Slash plus Make It Rain does indeed do that. Javier's Amoonguss, though, does have Protect, so that is something that you can go for here, because the Roaring Moon's not offering a lot of offensive pressure at the moment, especially if the Terastallization from the Golden Go happens, which I think we might be seeing here.
Yeah, you have to understand now why Markus has to commit to this. You get the special attack drop due to the Make It Rain, so you need to kind of boost yourself back up, so the Make It Rain is still going to have an impact onto the Roaring Moon that has obviously just protected. Unless Javier wants to go for a double, it is going to have to take some big damage. Iron Jugulus, first of all, going for the Iron Slash, just trying to help out that Golden Go in order to enable it to get that KO. We saw no Rage Powder come out from this Amoonguss, very likely going to be a spawn to Iron Jugulus. Ooh. And Roaring Moon is able to survive, so Javier will be able to move with both Pokemon in this turn.
And there's the flinch as well from the Air Slash. Oh. And then Spore comes out as well, though, into the Iron Jugulus, taking it for a nap from the future. Okay, so, okay, so there was a lot to talk about there. The Roaring Moon crucially living there. I think there's definitely a decent amount of bulk on that Roaring Moon, because we've seen it time and time again living all these attacks, which has been really key for it at the moment. And especially with the Tailwind, it might have an option to be able to try and get that up. But as you can see, the Golden Go is now at -2 special attack. It does have that choice specs and then the Terastallization, so kind of evening everything out. It's as if it's just kind of neutral on the field without all those boosts. But anyway, the Roaring Moon now does come out this time, and for the Iron Bundle, it's also switched in from Markus.
I mean, that flinch is exactly what Markus needs, because another Make It Rain, even if it has had those drops, would have been enough to pick up the KO against the Roaring Moon. I think the Amoonguss wisely protecting here. You know, Markus just keeping the Golden Go on the field. We know due to the choice specs, it's just going to have to keep clicking Make It Rain, but it's really not going to put a dent into this Iron Hands either. If I was Markus, I'd probably want to see that switch out on the next turn. I like the safe switch in here from the Iron Bundle. As you can see, not doing too much damage to the opposing side. Even with a critical hit, Iron Hands still relatively healthy, but the Iron Bundle now in a great position where it can apply some pressure to that Amoonguss going forward. On the flip side, though, Javier's now got Fake Out Pressure.
Yeah, Fake Out Pressure is back, which seems to be like the only thing that with Fake Out Pressure in this format at the moment, actually. A lot of Pokemon are running the Terra Ghost to be able to take that on, and that is something that I was going to say Delibird, the Iron Bundle does want to do a lot of the time. But yeah, withdrawing the Golden Go to reset those stat drops, getting Great Tusk again, and Amoonguss also comes out as well to be able to reset its health.
Yeah, Roaring Moon back in action as well. The Iron Bundle just protecting in the face of this Fake Out. No need to take any unnecessary damage at this point in time and have its Focus Sash broken. But Iron Hands actually was going straight on the offensive. Big damage with the close combat, but the Protect wisely on that Iron Bundle, just saving it and its Focus Sash from, you know, being broken at this point.
Yeah, that was well positioned by Javier, being able to kind of stall out the Tailwind now. But Iron Bundle obviously is still in play here with that drastically huge speed that it has. Icy Wind that further can drop the speed of the opponent. So as you can see, Markus has got himself in a nice position that he kind of had from game 1, where Great Tusk is in the exact kind of position it wants to be able to take a KO on the Iron Hands.
Yep, I like the protect here from Roaring Moon, knowing Icy Wind is likely coming its way. That would get the knockout onto that opposing Roaring Moon, but not with the protect. It is going to connect down onto the Iron Hands, though, do a little bit of chip, but I think the critical thing here is going to be the follow-up from the Great Tusk. Something like a Headlong Rush into that Iron Hands is going to be able to remove it from the field. Instead, it's going to be the Close Combat. Of course, with both those moves, Headlong Rush and Close Combat, you are going to drop your defense and special defense. However, the big damage payoff is worth it.
Yeah, you can see Markus obviously could have gone for like the Headlong Rush there to be able to get that KO, but maybe kind of covering just in case there was a switch and they wanted to take that a little bit better. Say if the Iron Bundle was in the back for Javier, that close combat would have just completely one-shot it then instead. But Amoonguss is the switch in instead this time, a little bit more healthy than last time. Iron Bundle does have the ice coverage at the moment, and there is still all the speed option for Markus here too. So it basically depends on the bulk of this Amoonguss as to whether it can kind of survive the onslaught that Markus can provide, because he's going to have to commit something to the Roaring Moon if he wants to KO it here, and that means he's not targeting the Amoonguss as hard. So, but with the Life Orb on the Great Tusk that we don't often see, it's often comes something like the Focus Sash. It's going to do a huge amount of damage, and I'm completely unfamiliar with how much damage Great Tusk can do with a Life Orb this time.
Yeah, that's the thing. We're not seeing, Terra Ground on it, but Life Orb boosting it up by that kind of 30%. Really, really nice extra damage output. Of course, the Iron Bundle in a great position to just go for the Icy Wind. And we see Javier making a switch. We are going to be able to see what that fourth and final Pokemon is. It's actually the Fluttermane, and if this is switching in now, and it's an Icy Wind from Markus, then the Focus Sash on that opposing Fluttermane is going to be broken very freely here for Markus. Of course, Javier is still able to utilize the Terra. It's going to be on that Amoonguss, and we are going to see a Water Amoonguss here. Now, this might be great in the sense that you can take that Icy Wind a little bit better, but in the following turn, if Iron Bundle wants to follow up with something like a Freeze Dry, that is going to hurt. But Amoonguss is going to definitely try and put it to sleep.
Yeah, so it's definitely taking the Icy Wind a little bit better now, but yeah, a Freeze Dry following then from would still be super effective, but I think a very key Icy Wind for sure on that Fluttermane, because yeah, Great Tusk can outspeed it in the following turn, but yeah, it was enough though, so Terastallization, if it hadn't terrored into that Water type, the Icy Wind would have done enough to be able to KO it, but instead it does live this time. It eats that Citrus Berry, so I think we're going to see a Spore here, Lou. Yeah,
that's the thing, you really needed to KO that Amoonguss to stop any Spores coming your way and kind of slowing down your momentum. It is going to go into that Iron Bundle once again, and of course being the nice speedy Pokemon that it is, it could easily have gone for another, a Freeze Dry here to pick up the KO into that Amoonguss. That would have also been nice coverage for something like the Roaring Moon in the back. So all eyes are, I suppose, drawn to this Great Tusk on the field, because it's the one that can really deal the damage here. You can always try and go for something like an Earthquake, and then that will deal damage to both the Amoonguss and the Fluttermane. I'm not sure if it will get the KO on the Fluttermane, but it's not necessarily the most physically defensive, so with that Life Orb, it might be enough. And you can switch out the Iron Bundle for, your Iron Jugulis in the back. It's going to have that flying type, so it's not going to be affected by the Earthquake.
Honestly, I think this is going to be really close as to whether this Earthquake knocks out or not. But if it does, obviously that is so big, but if it doesn't, there's a huge fairy move that could come back in. But instead, no, the Fluttermane is kind of coming out this time. The Roaring Moon's coming in, but there is no Terastallization into the Flying type on it this time, so it could just go down. Rage Powder comes out, but is this the Earthquake?
Let's see, the Citrus Berry also helping out that Amoonguss here. Earthquake is going to come out. It's going to connect onto only the Amoonguss here. Of course, the Roaring Moon as well, it is going to go down, but it is enough to get the knockout. Little Amoonguss fainting as well. That is exactly the momentum Markus needed.
Yeah, so even though Markus and his team are kind of half asleep at the moment, it seems, from this Amoonguss, this Great Tusk has been let run wild. And you're seeing how the Earthquake that Great Tusk is does often run quite commonly is really shown to kind of show how worth it really is here. Obviously, Fluttermane's now come in. It has reset the drops from the Icy Wind that it has had, so it's kind of got all the speed that it wants to at the moment. And the Dazzling Gleam, is enough to get into this Great Tusk. The Iron Jugulis is still taking a nap, and I think it's got a guaranteed turn of sleep here at the moment as well.
Yeah, that was a difficult knockout there for Markus, because like you said, a lot of Pokemon are sleeping here. You've got the Iron Bundle, the Iron Jugulis. You've got the Golden Go, however, that can come back into the frame. We've got to remember the Golden Go has terrored into that Steel type, so it's going to be able to resist those Dazzling Gleams coming its way. Taking a look at Fluttermane as well, it does run, that Shadow Ball, but you've dropped your Ghost typing. So as a Steel type only Golden Go, you're in a really good position here to click Make It Rain and just get the knockout. Yeah,
Javier needs a big super crit here, I think, at the moment, which is something that the game does not yet have. So Iron Jugulis takes a little bit of a nap, but Golden Go with that Choice Specs steel terrestrialization, make it rain, is definitely going to take the KO on this Floodmain, getting us to a Game 3, Lou.
Yeah, in contrast to day 1, where we had a lot of 2-0 knockouts on the broadcast, we are kicking off day 2 with a Game 3. And this is what I really love at this point in the competition. Both these players are also X and 2. They really want to make sure that they're not affording a loss very early on in this day, because of course there's another 5 Swiss rounds to go, and depending on where they want to get on those championship point brackets, they want to try and advance as much as they can. I think, the one thing I really liked from Markus here was in that game 2, piloting the Golden Go to greater effect. Making sure that it stayed on the field. You didn't go for that terror straight away. You did go for it in that second turn, but I think the key thing was just playing around, having that flexibility of it, locking it in when you took the special attack drop, but then critically putting it in the back and preserving it for later. That not only allowed him to win that game 2, but it reset all of those special attack drops so Golden Go could come back in refreshed and get a key knockout.
Something Javier has kind of not really done yet is actually used Tailwind on his Roaring Moon. So as we saw, the speed control that Markus was able to offer his team with the Golden Go and getting the Great Tusk in the exact position it wanted and the Icy Wind and stuff really put the momentum in his favour. Whereas Javier here hasn't really been given the opportunity to get those Tailwinds up. And I feel like if he did, he wouldn't need to worry too much about the Icy Wind drops on Fluttermane potentially, and even something like the Amoongus could say outspeed something like the Golden Go or a Gothitelle potentially to be able to get Spores off before something KOs it back.
Yeah, that's really true, and I really liked how Great Tusk kind of carried for Markus there while some of the Pokemon were sleeping, and that's again just showing the disruption that Amoongus is capable of. When Markus doesn't have the utility to get a knockout on it, particularly if it does go for that Terra Water, it's free to just go for those Spores. You already touched on the fact there really isn't a lot on Markus' side that can, ignore those Spores. Good as Gold on Golden Go will do it, and the Grass Terror on the Iron Hands, but I just feel like Iron Hands isn't necessarily the best call in this particular match. Yes, it's got a little bit of flexibility, but you can still deal with that Roaring Moon with other things. You've got the Iron Bundle, it can definitely deal with it.
It's the Iron Hands on Javier's end is kind of the apart from his own Golden Go, it's kind of the only thing that can really take and make it rain from the Golden Go. But if something like the Iron Bundle that Javier could kind of bring is obviously an option that has a perfect kind of matchup into Great Tusk. You can just go for that Hydro Pump and you get the knockout. There's no Torkoal here to kind of reduce that damage, so I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe that sort of a switch up. But here we have the Iron Hands and Amoongus lead actually into the, once again, Golden Go Iron Jugulis. Yeah,
Javier changing things up and Markus sticking with the same lead. You're going to get that speed boost on the Iron Jugulis, and it's in a position where, he's got to watch out for the fake out coming out from this Iron Hands, but you might want to try and get a Tailwind up. I love the offensive pressure straight away from Javier with that Amoongus, applying that Spore potential to the Iron Jugulis.
Yeah, so we can see Markus hovering over that trick there. I think in Game 2 there was an opportunity that he could have tricked the Iron Hands earlier on, which maybe Markus is kind of kicking himself for, seeing how maybe good that could have been. He obviously won the game already, but it's still a present threat to kind of either of these Pokemon at the moment. We've always kind of seen go on the defensive, even when he had that fake out pressure. He's never actually clicked it yet. He's just kind of had it there and then gone for something like a Volt Switch or kind of protected it around it.
Oh, well, Amoongus actually going for the Protect here, calling the Protect of the Iron Jugulis and doesn't want to take any unnecessary damage. It is going to be the Shadow Ball coming out from the Golden Go. That's going to connect down into the Iron Hands. So the Assault Bear's paying off here. It's only going to take about 30%. It does get the drop, though, and that's something that could be detrimental for Javier going forward. As well, the Iron Hands wanted to try and kind of position itself off the field there, but wasn't able to thanks to the Protect.
A nice safe play from Markus there, because Iron Jugulis is the only threat from the fake out, and it's the threat from the electric type coverage from Iron Hands. So I think I would have liked to see Javier be a little bit more bold there with where he was targeting, but it's turn 2 straight away, and it's the double up into the Amoongus, it looks like.
Yeah, just trying to get this Amoongus off the field, and it's able to do it. Markus getting the knockout on Amoongus with the double up on his side of the field. Of course, Iron Hand's now free to go for some damage, but it doesn't look like it's in a position to get a knockout on either Pokemon. Does a little bit of chip to the Golden Go, but again, I love the way Markus is piloting this Golden Go right now, not going for the Make It Rain and getting those special attack drops, just sticking with the Shadow Ball with the choice Specs. It's going to be dealing an extra 50% damage. It also means that Markus has no real need necessarily to go for that Steel Terror, because you're not boosting up a Steel type move. Yes, you can still use it defensively, but I really don't think it's necessary. That frees up the Terror then for another Pokemon later on in the match for Markus.
Yeah, you can really see the utility of Iron Jugulis here at the moment, that you just don't need to terrestrialize in that flying type anymore if you're a Roaring Moon. If you were a Roaring Moon as opposed to an Iron Jugulis, and you've got that flying reliable damage that we've seen get flinches, do a lot of damage to the Amoonguses, plus that Tailwind coverage that it always has. So we've seen it really used to like great effect here. And having a Moongus just completely gone from Javier's team suddenly limits him so much more because there's no redirection, there's no kind of putting to sleep that frees up your other Pokemon. So, and Markus is now in the position where he can do something like a Tailwind and a Shadow Ball, and if it is into something like that Swing Fluttermane, that could be pretty big for him.
Yeah, absolutely love to see what Markus is going for here. Roaring Moon is going to go for the Tailwind, however. There's no Tailwind on the Iron Juggler's side of things, so Markus is going to have to play around that a little bit more next turn. Goldengo does go for the Shadow Ball, though, connects onto that Fluttermane that's just switched in, bringing it all the way down to its Focus Sash. An amazing read there from Markus. You know, the Shadow Ball going into the Iron Hands really wouldn't have done a lot of damage, so a really brave play. It does get the drop as well, but it really doesn't matter with only 1 HP to contend with.
Yeah, the Ghost type on the Goldengo is really kind of the pressure that he needs. So again, Markus kind of just going for a generally safe play there, protecting from the potential fake out from that Iron Hands that was there earlier, keeping it around a little bit longer. Goldengo can now go for another attack because it's Ghost type and it's pretty free to, because it can kind of it can probably at least take a hit from something from the Roaring Moon, because obviously there's the potential for him to have gone for the Translation to the Steel type and take the move. Javier, though, he doesn't go for that Throat Chop instead, but instead gets up the Tailwind, which he has not got in previous 2 games. So let's see if he can make the most of it going forward.
I really like to see this Terra here. It's the Terra Steel on the Iron Jugulis, meaning it's going to be able to take these Dazzling Gleams from the opposing Fluttermane much better. Of course, the speed advantage is on Javier's side of the field, but that's something Markus is going to look to try and match. There is the Dazzling Gleam. You can see it's doing minimal damage to both of these Steel types on Markus' side as Roaring Moon follows up with the Throat Chop. That will be able to get the knockout. Dark type, you know, dealing big damage into the Goldengo, but now all eyes are drawn onto that Iron Jugulis that is going to be able to go for that Tailwind and match the speeds. The key thing here now is as well, when Tailwind ends for Javier, Markus is going to have that 1-turn advantage.
Yeah, so it's not a hard decision to just switch in your Iron Bundle right now. It is the naturally fastest Pokemon of everything that these 6 Pokemon on each side have. So as long as you kind of hit your Icy Winds, you're kind of good. So
fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed in general, really, because you may need that Icy Wind drop on the Roaring Moon, or at least from the damage perspective, to be able to keep whittling it down. Because obviously we saw the booster energy on the Iron Jugulis a little bit earlier, boosting its speed, so it is naturally going to outspeed the Roaring Moon at the moment. But the Tailwind, yes, is matched, and Markus does have that extra turn stacked up. So any kind of stalling of Tailwinds is going to always kind of be in Markus' favour now. So yeah, that Steel-type Terror was like really key to be able to take the damage that it needed from this Fluttermane. As you can see as well, the Fluttermane only has Dazzling Gleam. It doesn't have like a single target Moonblast that often does a lot more damage. So Fluttermane going on the defensive here, switching out. I
really like the way Markus has played this turn. You're going for the Icy Wind to obviously try and deal damage to that opposing Fluttermane, remove it from the field and lower the speed as well of that Roaring Moon, which could help you out if, you know, your Great Tusk in the back wants to come back in, because we've seen how fast that Roaring Moon is in comparison to it, and if Tailwind's equal, then Roaring Moon's going to outspeed. So you want to be able to get that drop, particularly if you've got something like the Flying Terror type here now as well. But I think the key thing for me is the Iron Jugulis was targeting down into that Fluttermane, and a Pokemon like the Iron Hand switching in is going to take some damage from it. You do get that Icy Wind chip as well, and now you're in this nice position where you can apply pressure once again with the Iron Bundle. The key thing, however, is that fake out.
Acrobatics, though, is coming out from this Roaring Moon. It's doing what it does best, and it's not quite a knockout here. Markus does have the Focus Sash on his Iron Bundle, so he was kind of safe to begin with, but that's still a decent amount of damage, and it's probably now in like fake out range here. Iron Bundle does, though, have the Protect option that it can go for here, which is fairly safe. Again, you don't mind really stalling out Tailwind here. Javier, I think, still has kind of one more turn of Tailwind anyway, so even if you go for a double Protect here, it's pretty safe. There's no kind of option for Javier to get yet another Tailwind up, because you can't stack them yet until it's kind of already over. So it's a fairly safe play here. The best Javier can do versus that is maybe switch out his Iron Hands to preserve the fake out again, self-Volt Switch if you so wanted to. I don't know, I'm not sure why you do that instead of switching out.
Wilder things have happened in Pokemon, though, let's be fair. You're right, though, that the fake out is definitely the pressure on the field right now. So Iron Jugulis going for the Protect, the Iron Bundle also going for the Protect here, just wisely making sure that it's not going to get KO'd here, and also not allow Javier any kind of advantage. The Iron Hands was actually targeting down, of course, that Iron Bundle, trying to get a knockout in addition to a flinch, and the Roaring Moon can follow up with that Throat Chop that was going down into the Iron Jugulis. Now you're in this ball position state as well if you are Markus, where the Tailwind on Javier's side has petered out. You have all the speed advantage, so what do you do here?
Well, Roaring Moon has Protect, so that always has to be considered, but the Iron Hands is a safe slot that you can fire anything into because it's Assault Vest. Doesn't have Protect, and in the back is a very low HP Fluttermane as well. So either way, you can basically guarantee a KO into that slot if you kind of double up into it. Because due to that Assault Vest, you can see that it can take the damage really well. It would probably need both, but as we can see here, Markus actually clicked into the Encore, which is something the Iron Bundles on stream anyway have started to be running a little bit more at the moment. But as we can see, the Iron Hand's actually switching out, maybe for preserving that fake out for a little bit longer.
Yeah, not falling for the trap here. Roaring Moon is going to go for the Protect, however. Again, a brave thing to do in the face of an encoring Iron Bundle. Iron Jugglers is going to be able to get the knockout on that Flutter Mane with the Air Slash. This now will force Javier to bring the Iron Hands back in. It will no longer be able to switch out, so there'll only be one more fake out pressure to be had in this game 3. Again, now you're in this situation where, you know, both of the Pokemon on Markus' side have attacked, the Tailwind has petered out, a Fake Out's going to come back from the field. You could easily just go for another double Protect here. The issue is, if you're Javier, though, you don't actually want to go for the Iron Hands. You've seen that there's Encore on the team sheet. You've also seen now that Markus isn't afraid to click it.
And unfortunately, that's probably a wasted opportunity on the Roaring Moon from last turn to get off an attack and actually knock out this Iron Bundle, because having gone for the Protect and going for like a safe play, you could argue, switch, Protect, ball position, you're already a few Pokemon down, you're already kind of on the back foot from speed control, and you already know you're going to be on the back foot even after both Tailwinds have expired. So I feel Javier needs to be a little bit bolder there, maybe go for a KO on something this turn. And we haven't even seen the Great Tusk come in yet, and Roaring Moon with that Flying Terror is the main way he's going to be able to deal the damage to it, especially after the Flutter Mane's now gone. So yes, Fake Out pressure is alive at the moment, but I suppose Tailwind can go up this turn, but both of Markus' Pokemon can target it down and KO it.
That was right down to the wire. Every second just ticking away as Markus makes a switch and brings in the Great Tusk from the back, just not wanting the Fake Out to go down into the Iron Bundle. But actually, Javier targets down the Iron Jugglers, gets a cheeky critical hit for some extra damage, and of course it's going to flinch and not be able to go for anything like a Tailwind. Roaring Moon, on the other hand, is going to be able to kind of laugh in the face of this Iron Jugulus and set up a Tailwind on Javier's side.
I don't know about that. I feel like you should have, like, just kind of targeting down, either going for, you should probably Tailwind and go for something like a Freeze Dry into the Roaring Moon there. It's fairly safe because you can deny any sort of Tailwind from Salamence, or if your Iron Bundle gets attacked, you can at least match Tailwinds going forward. But yeah, Markus has kind of left Javier open to be able to call the Fake Out, and obviously, as we can see, Javier called it absolutely perfectly there. So going into the next turn, this Roaring Moon is going to be very quick. Obviously, with the Iron Hands, it depends on the training of its speed. So it's often not running a lot of speed. So in Tailwind, it probably doesn't outspeed the Iron Juggless based on the booster energy speed, but it may have a chance to outspeed the Great Tusk depending on how fast Markus has trained his.
Well, Great Tusk just going for a Protect here, doesn't want to take any unnecessary damage coming its way as it has just switched onto the field. Roaring Moon's going to go first with the Throat Chop, does huge damage into Iron Jugulus. If this Iron Hands is going to be able to follow up, it might be able to get the knockout, but not before the Iron Jugulus is able to get the Tailwind up and match it again for the second time in this Game 3. The knockout will happen for Iron Jugulus, but this does now allow Markus the opportunity to bring that Iron Bundle back onto the field. His last two remaining Pokemon in the form of these two Paradox Pokemon to now try and close out Game 3 for Markus.
Yeah, great call by Javier to kind of predict the Protect there. As Markus kind of tries to go for something from his Iron Jugulus as well. But Iron Bundle is now the switch in, and as we've seen it in time and time again, it is just the fastest Pokemon in the format currently, based on what most people kind of are bringing. So if you've got match Tailwinds, as we do have, you are still able to offer more speed control thanks to the dynamic kind of speed interactions of this format with the Icy Wind. And that will allow your Great Tusk, obviously, to almost definitely outspeed the Iron Hands, even though it might be in Tailwind, for instance. So Markus is still very much in the driver's seat at the moment, especially with that Ice offense. It just depends on Javier's bulk of his Pokemon to be able to maybe live these attacks.
Iron Bundle going first, connects the Freeze Dry onto that Roaring Moon, will get the knockout, and then we know the Great Tusk, its eyes just woke up, it's alert, it can follow up into the Iron Hands. We see the handshake from these trainers. Javier knows the writing is on the wall, and all it's going to take from Markus is this headlong rush, get a solid knockout, and he wins this set 2-1.
Congrats to Markus. Yeah, really well played set. Like, just using that Great Tusk to great effect, to be honest. Like, it was always just dishing out so much damage every time it was on the field, and it was always in that right position, really well supported by Markus's rest of his Pokemon, especially from that, like, not the Flutter Mane, the Iron Bundle with the Icy Wind, and just being able to control everything. And because Javier wasn't bringing his own Iron Bundle, it was always on Markus to have just naturally a faster team anyway, so he had less pressure to be able to deal with the speed interactions, particularly from the booster energy on that on the Iron Juggless boosting its speed.
Honestly, Pokemon trainers at home, this was a masterclass in ball positioning. We saw lots of switches on both sides. Javier constantly pivoting in and out that Iron Hands, applying that fake out pressure, making sure that the Roaring Moon was in a position where it could still go for that Tailwind. And on the opposing side, Markus making sure that the Pokemon like the Iron Bundle, the Golden Go were all preserved so expertly throughout that entire set. This is why both these players are the caliber of Pokemon trainer that they are. And I think it was an excellent exhibition of how ball positioning, you know, really thinking turns ahead, not just the turn in front of you, is what can enable you to win a match and what you need in order to be a top player.
And we saw how the dynamic interactions between the same kind of 4 Pokemon that was kind of getting used, there was really no switch up. Both of these trainers had the same kind of game plan going into what each other had. And I imagine that on Javier's team, during kind of practicing that, you're probably practicing versus what Markus has generally got, which is arguably fairly standard, but then you've got that Iron Jugulis. So in that Iron Jugulis, because it's not a Roaring Moon, it's got that booster energy and the speed, something has to change there. So you've already got that flying offense without having to commit the terrestrialization, so Amoonguss is suddenly a little bit more worried compared to if it was in front of a Roaring Moon, where normally you'd have to force the terrestrialization to be able to get KO'd by an acrobatics. But this time for Markus, he was able to just leave it there, and he can defensively go into the Steel type, as we saw really keenly, to get up a late game Tailwind versus a Fluttermane with those Fairy moves. So a really excellent switch up for Markus.
Oh, definitely. And I really want to credit the mental of Markus as well. Going into that game 1, losing it the way you did, that's always very difficult, particularly when your tournament lifeline is kind of on the line. And actually, what I really liked to see was Markus kind of looking up, thinking, right, what is it I could do to adjust better going into that game 2? And then you saw the adaptation with that Golden Go, you know, not going for the Terra straight away. And then even more so in game 3, not going for it at all and locking into that Shadow Ball instead. And I think that really does, again, show kind of that approach you have to take to a best-of-3 set. It's not about game 1, it's about, you know, game 2 or 3. It's about that whole series of a set. And actually, look at what you learn in game 1. Look at not only how damage calcs maybe went or how your opponent played, but how then you can adapt in order to get that victory the next time. And I really want to credit the way he thought through how his team composition was and how he could adapt it to get a victory.
And that's exactly what we saw. These players played really well on both sides, and there was a constant back and forth between these Pokemon because you had the naturally bulky Pokemon that we had in the Iron Hands. There was so much switching around, and I liked how Javier was kind of playing his Iron Hands, where he very rarely went for the fake out and was kind of just had it there as a threat, because as soon as you get someone playing defensive and you can kind of call that a little bit more, it always allows you to kind of get a better board position just because you have a move. You don't even have to use it, and that's something that we've seen a lot of dynamic in an open team sheet play, especially if you say have Protect. It's always the option of suddenly your attack could do nothing, but I could just not click it, and it still has the same effect.
You're right. With Fake Out as well, it's like, oh, who are they going to target, particularly if both your Pokemon are susceptible to it, and you have to play that mind game. And we saw Javier actually, like you say, not go for that Fake Out, actually go straight on the offensive. And I think you're right. Sometimes that open team sheet can be quite unnerving, particularly when you look at the Iron Bundle with the Encore as well. Even if Markus isn't clicking that, you know he has the potential to be able to do so. So maybe going for that Faker or that Protect in the face of such a speedy Pokemon isn't actually the safest choice to go for.
Yeah, and what was interesting about the Iron Bundle as well is that we didn't see any water moves on it. There's kind of no water coverage on the team at all, actually, which is interesting to see. And obviously that hasn't really made a difference for Markus at the moment, because I don't know if he kind of called the Torkoal kind of meta play at the moment. That would be really interesting to kind of know about in his interview, I think, which will be coming up soon. So we can ask him a little bit more about that. As we saw, he was using the Freeze Dry really well for like maximum ice offensive damage. He used the Icy Wind for the speed control, especially when you're kind of matching a Tailwind. You want something extra to kind of help your speed, and Icy Wind is perfect for that. And then the Encore pressure as well to kind of punish any sort of defensive play. So it was the perfect tool Markus, I think, had here, and probably his MVP.
Yes, definitely. And he was able to play around the Fluttermane on Javier's side really well. You know, Fluttermane, the #1 Pokemon in the usage stat of the whole tournament and of day 2. And he was able to show that, you know, it can be taken down. Particularly, we've seen a few different variations. This was the Focus Sash one, and that can often be really dangerous because you might have a move that will do huge damage, particularly if you want to hit it on the defensive side, but then it hangs around, can get a KO in return. But actually, Markus was able to pilot that really well, breaking the Focus Sash early and allowing the follow-up to knock it out.
And we saw the really interesting Golden Go set as well in that Choice Specs, which we haven't seen very much of. It had a little bit of play, especially in Series 1, with that kind of Murkrow with the Golden Go as well, because you can just go Tailwind, make it rain, and then just keep going. But you could then Haze and to just reset the drops when you make it rain and just keep going with that Steel Terrestrialization. So we've kind of have that here in the Iron Jugulis being the Dark and Flying, still similar to the Murkrow as well, so I like that call. So maybe we'll see a bit of it play later on. So I really like the dynamic there of him still being able to use that mode, but with the updated Paradox version.
I don't know how I can get Gastrodon into this conversation. Maybe that's why there was no Hydro Pump on the Iron Bundle, because Markus feared Gastrodon running around.
I'll give it to you.
Maybe it's a stretch, but
it is a stretch.
It works. And speaking of Markus, we've got our winners interview with him ready, so let's kick it over to the couch.
And welcome back, everybody. We are here with the winners interview of Day 2 for the Pokemon Regional Championships of Bochum, Round 10, Day 2 Swiss, with none other than Markus Stadter. Markus, feels good.
Yeah, of course. Always feels good winning the first round of the day.
Yeah.
And then after, pretty intense match. So, I'm happy that I came out on top.
I mean, there was a lot to process in that match itself. I think Javier played stellar as well as yourself. He turned on the heat quite well in Game 1. And you were able to bring it back slowly yet surely in Game 2 and 3. I think there was a lot of tailwind battles that ensued from both sides, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I was pretty happy to see that his Roaring Moon with the booster energy was boosting attack rather than speed. So I would always threaten to go for Tailwind first. So I was pretty happy to see that. And then in the first game, I think I played a little bit too cautiously and didn't want to make any big reads or anything. Just wanted to try and see what he can do against my team. But he played it well and got the end game down, and bringing the Amoonguss I think was good for him. So kudos to him. And then in the second and third game, I tried to play a little bit more aggressively, make use of my Tailwind turns a little bit better, bring in maybe the Tusk or the Goldango in even stronger positions, and that, worked out.
I think one of the main obstacles that we noticed for your team was that Iron Hands. It really put in the work, just being that natural bulky Pokemon that was able to not only threaten, let's say, for example, the Iron Jugulus with Wild Charge, also its fighting type coverage was really good for Javier's side when, for example, you terrestrialized into Steel with Goldengo, but also the pivot action. There was so many pivot actions going with the Volt Switch.
Yeah, I think just having Iron Hands and Amoonguss gives even an offensive team like his the strong backbone, so to say, so he could make those plays, and it was pretty threatening. I think especially the combination of then also him having a Roaring Moon, which threatens a knockout on my Great Tusk, which is usually, of course, a Pokemon that does really well against Iron Hands, but eventually I found those positions that I needed to be in, and it worked out for me.
It really did. It was a lot of back and forths, but I think that is sort of giving credit to veteran players with loads of experience accumulated over the years, playing at the highest of levels, because so far in Bochum, honestly, we have most definitely seen the brightest and finest in all of Europe, so it has been such a treat. But of course, I did hear, team building wise, you are not the only person running this team. There's a couple of more peeps within your circle. Yeah,
so the Iron Jugulus was something that Wolf wanted to try. So after he won regionals with Screamtail, he was going even further down the list.
Oh my God,
what could be next? Iron Jugulus was what caught our attention, because it's similar to what Roaring Moon can do with Speed Booster and Tailwind. But you don't have a 4 times weakness. And so you're not forced to terrestrialize so often, and the fast snarl also comes in pretty handy.
I mean, it's something that's sort of lacking in the current meta, that fast snarl. We commonly see it on Pokemon such as Arcanine, which are known to sort of want to add a bit more of it, extend its longevity on the field, and sort of mid-speed tiering, depending on how it's trained.
But you wanna snarl in front of, before those Flutter Mains, Iron Bundles, and Arcanine cannot provide that, but Iron Jugulus can do it.
It's a very nice niche, and it's really cool that you guys have been able to identify it going into this. So far, it seems like it has brought some really good success, so fingers crossed, of course, for the oncoming rounds for yourself. But do you have any special shout-outs that you would like to go ahead and give out?
Yeah, of course, to my team building group, all my friends, my girlfriend, everyone who's supporting me, and I also want to give a shout-out to this venue, because well, it was 9 years ago, I think, at this point, where I won my first nationals in this holy hall, so I'm very happy to be back, and I'll try to repeat the feat.
Well, so far it has welcomed you with open hands, and we are looking forward to seeing your progression into the next 4 Swiss rounds. That has been Markus and myself. We are wishing you all the best. as well as yourself, Marcus. We'll be cutting to a very short break where we will be getting started once again with the round 11 of Swiss for day 2.